review لأنه إعادة الميديا text يعني means that we will waste this lecture. ما أعتقد سجلناها احنا، كان رجعتوا لها للتسجيل. سجلناها؟ أحد عنده علم إذا تسجلت المحاضرة؟
ما نزلت على اليوتيوب.
ما نزلت، لا ما تسجلت. Okay, a quick review for media texts. يعني as we said in the previous lecture, for those who attended the lecture, يعني every field in translation has its own words, its own style, its own jargons, its own terminologies. So of course media is not different from the other scopes or fields of translation. So it also has its own words and jargons. I highlighted some important notes to be considered, which says that media deals with the main means for receiving information and entertainment. The language usually found, articles, advertisements, published in newspapers or broadcast on radio. يعني طبعا احنا نعرف انه يعني معاصرين انتو هذا الواقع. For example, on the internet, on TV, on radio shows or radio programs, or any kind of media or articles in newspapers or journals. Dealing with such kind of discourse is not similar to, for example, literary scope على سبيل المثال, as far as we're talking about translation. So such kind of texts, الفابريكس مال الماتيريالز اللي تستخدم في هذا المجال need to be a little bit concise, need to be direct, need to be summarized. For example, in talking about a piece of news on, let's say, a website or on TV or on radio, of course we are not going to go through every single detail, busying the readers or the attendants or receivers' mind of what's going on. So dealing with such text, of course, would be done with little words, but it should be much effective. It should be highly influential in order to attain the required result or the goal. So these depend on the addressee, and their main function is to express the message in an effective way. So they emphasize the layout and mode of a presentation. وأعتقد ضربت لكم بعض الأمثلة عليها في المحاضرة السابقة. إنه we do not keep the gist of the information. ما نترك الزبدة مال الموضوع until the middle or until the 3-4 lines later. No. عادة headlines give us the gist of the topic. تعطينا زبدة الكلام من البداية. يعني which is somehow يعني different from other literary translation, other types of translation, where we have an introduction, we have a body, and we have a conclusion. Here, no, we don't have anything like that. We have only the main important things to be put in headlines at the topic, and in order to catch the addressee's attention. So being a subcategory of non-fiction, media texts do not always apply the literary use of language. طبعا هذا literary use is not applicable, of course. First, media tend to adopt a different structure. Careful structuring is important for all types of text, whether you are writing a novel, a letter to a friend, a recipe. So these texts often have a different opening and emphasis. عادة يكون بها بداية تختلف عن بداية النصوص الأخرى، وبها تأكيد على الخبر الأول. أعتقد ضربت لكم مثال على حادث مثلا car crash, for example, where a few people were killed in that car crash. So the text would say that 17 people killed in car crash, for example, somewhere, instead of saying On Monday morning at 7 p.m., the attendants traveled with their car and they used or took the highway traveling to some distant place, and the road was open and there were a little bit of mist or fog and so on, and then a car crash took place. No, this is not the case in media text. The media text, the translation would be just like that. 17 people, 10 people killed in car crash because of fog, because of mist, and then the details would come later. So this is what we mean by media text, highlighting the influential information. The effect of the information is present at the very beginning, and then there might be details to come next. Then we talked about conflicts and civil wars, and we said translating text about conflicts and wars remain one of the most complex tasks faced by translators because of the type of register, because of the lack of information in both cultures, because a translator, if he is not aware of both contexts, problems might appear. And we discussed an example about the word mokusatsu taken from Japanese, where the translator translated it as it is wartime, while the writer or the speaker mentioned that, and he meant no comment. So a knowledge of both registers of both cultures is required in order not to fall into the problem. وشفنا هنا an example what might somebody when some people consider it holy war might be considered guerrilla war by others, and I gave you examples which I cannot repeat because I am recording now. And then we had an idea about translating some example. Traumatized Syrians flee to Jordan. Well, we discussed the main terms that are present here, which I listed down there: mounting pressure, suspend, humanitarian aid, bombardment, cowering in their homes, etc. Then we referred to something about the uprisings and revolutions. We had an example juxtaposing two texts, English and Arabic, and we compared how some words are translated and manipulated by the writer. You can have a look at these examples at home while you are free. Then we refer to natural disasters. And we said that the religious and the religious context plays a role in such kind of translations. When we said that, for example, natural disasters are perceived religiously by Muslims, for example, in certain Muslim contexts, who understand that everything does not happen by chance. It is a kind of warning or something made by the Creator, by God. While this is not applicable in, for example, different other contexts, for example, in Chinese context or other non-Muslim contexts. And we said we need to pay attention, or the translator needs to consider that when translating into Muslim, for example, community, or from a Muslim community into a foreign community. So these two issues should be kept in mind when doing or delivering the translation. And we had also a kind of table of some examples related to that context. Casualties, earthquake, shelter, survivors, aid, provide aid, توفير إغاثة والمساعدة, debris, الأنقاض قلنا, و stranded, محاصر, وبعد عندنا embark on digging, ينكب على الحفر, etc. These are related to in natural disasters. And we were supposed to take this example, and we did not. You might do it at home and see how you translate and check your translation. Natural disasters, definitions and types. We can highlight the main systems, منظومات, environmental, positively, negatively, but nature, no matter how it was strengthened, controlling, تظل باسطة سلطانها, controlling could be translated as controlling, aspects, damages, phenomena, just like other natural phenomena, which goes under or to the bottom and the surface of planet Earth. I believe that most of the words are familiar for you in this context, and these are simple. You just need to read them. I don't think they are confusing. The writer made it very clear. You just need to read and memorize how to use eatable and edible. I just collect them. I know they are not difficult to understand, but I just collect them for you here. Everyone and every one, how they are used. Hire, rent, let, lease, charter. We said most of them are similar. Only lease and charter are used. Charter for ships and lease for big buildings. And historic or historical. Historical is related to history, the adjective of history, while historic means the example we had, and they were inflicted a historic defeat, يعني هزيمة عظيمة. Historic means فشي ما يحصل كل فترة, يعني فشي تاريخي, but it is not an adjective from historical. We had the human وhumane. وقلنا human اللي نعرفه احنا the human beings, while humane is the adjective of being a human. Both are rendered as insani in the Arabic translation. These are the main issues we dealt with in media translation. If you have any questions, please, I am listening before we move to the other lesson. Even you don't have any questions. Legal texts. Legal texts. النصوص القانونية, أو anything related to the judicial systems, الأنظمة القضائية. As you know, such kind of texts require a certain type of accuracy. A translator should be very accurate, should be very cautious in dealing with such texts, because any word that is misinterpreted might result in a kind of a problem. And these things, judicial systems, the judges, the courts, the sentences, the judicial sentences, so a kind of problem might lead to imprisonment, for example, of somebody, or setting him free while he should be in prison, or anything related to the legal issues, the legal systems. So legal language is known to be very strict, yes, and precise. لهذا النصوص القانونية عادة when they are translated, they should go to the correct people, and those correct people would charge a good amount of money in translation. For example, this paragraph, if it is a legal text, this might take almost $30 for translation, because it is certified translation from authorized people, so they charge somehow a huge amount of money. With no freedom for a creative style, you don't have the option to do it the way you like. No, you have to translate the text as it is, without being free to do what you want. But although legal translation belongs to a specialized translation, it shares some of the characteristics of general translation. It can be classified according to the functions of legal discourse and in connection to the legal discourse subtype. Similar to other specialized translation texts, legal texts serve an informative function. They just give the information without any dexterity, without any interference. So you don't have the right to show any opinions in such texts. So these texts can have both directive and imperative function, as well as expressive. Legal texts are informative for the general reader and directive for a specific group of people. Of course, there are so many types. طبعا not everything is important here, but this is just to give you an information about how these kinds of texts are dealt with. 3 different types of legal writings to be distinguished: academic text, which consists of academic research, journal, and legal textbook. هذا واحد. And the other type is legislative or statutory writings consisting of acts of parliament, القضايا اللي تخص سياقات البرلمان, and contracts, العقود, treaties, المعاهدات, etc. Sorry, I missed the B. Juridical texts covering court judgments or law reports هذا النوع الثاني. Then we have academic texts, نصوص أكاديمية علمية جامعية تحتوي على البحوث والمقالات الأكاديمية اللي تتعلق بمثلا كتاب يدرس مثلا علم الأحكام القضائية اللي يدرس في كلية القانون أو كلية العلوم السياسية. هذا المقصود من عنده. juridical text الأشياء اللي لها علاقة بالنظام القضائي، النصوص القضائية juridical covering court judgments التي تغطي الأحكام القضائية، أحكام المحكمة، or law reports أو تقارير القانونية. وثالثا legislative or statutory writings الأحكام التشريعية أو الكتابات التشريعية التي تحتوي على الأكت يعني المادة، المواد أو القوانين قوانين أو تشريعات البرلمان، العقود والمعاهدات. كل هذه تندرج تحت اسم legal text ولازم تترجم على أنها legal translation. So these things are critical, concise, and they must be done in the cautiously بطريقة حذرة. These texts are classified as follows: legislative texts، أكو نوع آخر من النصوص القضائية التي أو القانونية، مثلا عندنا النصوص التشريعية legal scholarly texts، النصوص الأكاديمية القانونية اللي يستخدموها المحامين والقانونيين، والنصوص القانونية الخاصة أو الشخصية اللي تخص المحامين، مثلا العقود وعقود الإيجار، الوصايا، وصية مال شخص يريد يموت أو ميت. هذا أيضا نوع آخر. I don't need this. Here the writer says, it can be argued that translation of legal terminologies is the backbone, العمود الفقري of the legal translation. المصطلحات والمفردات الخاصة في هذا المجال، إذا المترجم عنده فهم واسع بها، it is the backbone of legal translation. So translating these terminologies often requires a sound translation strategy, especially in contexts where some of these terminologies do not have equivalents in the target text. عندنا هنا بعض المفردات اللي تخص this type of translation. For example, license, under the terms, term يعني حكم, aforementioned, as defined by law, executable, copying and modification, accompanying, المرفقة, copyright, copyright reserved و unrestricted. So these types are these words are some of the words used in this kind of translation. I had an example from the text which just gives us an idea about how some words are defined, how some words are translated. هنا المقطع الإنجليزي, and down there is the Arabic translation. So the Security Council, مجلس الأمن, has a primary responsibility. لديه مسؤولية أساسية under the charter. Under the charter. هاي الكلمة تكون غريبة أحيانا. charter يعني الميثاق. For the maintenance of international peace and security. Maintenance نعرفها صيانة, but here it is not صيانة. It is here means المحافظة على international peace, peace and security, الأمن والسلام الدوليين. It is so organized as to be able to function continuously, أن يعمل على أو تكون له وظيفة دائمة مستمرة, and a representative of each of its members must be present at all times at United Nations headquarters, يعني مكان headquarters, الموقع أو location. عندنا هنا meeting of the council was convened. The word convened, convention, اجتماع. convened يعني يعقد أو يجتمع. at headquarters, headquarters مثل ما قلنا المقر. attended by heads of state. heads of state يعني رؤساء الدول والحكومات of 13 of its 15 members. ministers of foreign affairs. minister وزير, foreign أجنبي, affairs الشؤون الخارجية أو الشؤون الأجنبية. minister of foreign affairs يعني وزير الخارجية. The council may meet elsewhere than at headquarters, sessions and so when a complaint concerning a threat, عندما تصل إلى المجلس قضية. شوفوا هنا احنا نعرف إنه complaint هي شكوى, but sometimes it has or it could be used under different terms. So here it is not شكوى, قضية. concerning a threat, تهديد to peace, تهديد للسلام is brought before it. Other words, mediation. شوفوا هنا عندنا كلمة the council itself undertakes, المجلس نفسه undertakes investigation and mediation. Look at undertakes, how the translator used it. يطلع. Undertakes يعني يتحمل، احنا نعرفها ويأخذ دور. Here the translation is يطلع المجلس نفسه بالعمل والوساطة. Mediation الوساطة. It may appoint special representatives or request the Secretary General يعني رئيس المجلس to do so or to use his good offices. It may set forth principles for a peaceful settlement. أو يضع مبادئ من أجل يعني somehow it is not difficult for you to understand, but there are some words that need a specific comprehension because they might be used in a different way, the way we see here: charter, complaint, mediation, undertakes. So this is what we need to keep in mind in certain contexts. Translating agreements. If you have any questions, don't wait until the end. You can say questions or comments. Yes.
دكتور، هسه احنا من اللي بدك تشرح انت فقط اللي يتعلق عليهن مطلوبات، واللي شرح ما تعلق عليه ما نقرأ.
يعني somehow this is what is required. يعني mainly the things we mention, we highlight, are required. Okay. The other section is translating agreements. As far as we are talking about legal translation, هاي كلها sections موجودة تحت legal translation. I want you to understand that this is يعني high information اللي we are dealing with now are not only specific to our course here. طبعا يعني this is somehow we sometimes go further than required. So this might be useful for you even after we do the translation course and you finish your study and go home. We try to use this in order to widen your horizons and open some doors for you. It might be useful like 1 year or 2 years later for you when you try to work in different sectors. Translating agreements and contracts. Agreements الاتفاقيات والcontracts يعني العقود. The process of translating agreements and contracts is fraught with many challenges. This word is very important. I just learnt it today. Is fraught with. Fraught with means محفوفة ب. محفوفة بالمخاطر. مو عندنا sometimes we use this sentence. هذا a situation is محفوف بالمخاطر. We can use this expression. Is fraught with many challenges, some of which are to do with the specific nature of the material to be translated. Translating agreements and contracts requires a specific knowledge of the subject area. No such knowledge could be achieved through the accumulation of vocabularies or a glossary related to this genre of text. Therefore, translator is required not only to have a broad knowledge of the source text but also the target one, especially the equivalent terminologies in it. هنا عندنا هي شيء مثل المثال A British Irish Council اللي هو هذا British Irish Council. A British Irish Council مجلس council you know مجلس المجلس البريطاني الأيرلندي will be established under a new British Irish agreement. سوف يتم تأسيسه تحت اتفاقية أيرلندية بريطانية to promote الارتقاء لتقوية harmonious and mutually beneficial development التطور المتبادل المفيد الذي يكون ذا فائدة of the totality of relationship among the peoples of these islands. لمجمل totality العلاقات ضمن شعوب هاتين الجزيرتين. You know, أيرلندا وبريطانيا جزر اثنين. So, if I ask you about this, I expect you to understand how to use these words: agreement, promote, harmonious, ودي نقدر نقول عليها mutually متبادل, beneficial يعني ذا فائدة وإلى آخره. هذه أشياء لها علاقة ب some of the legal translation. tenant. التننت هو من هو التننت تعرفوا؟ No idea. اوكي التننت يعني المستأجر, الشخص اللي يأجر سكن او شقة او بيت او anything, هذا الشخص اللي يسكن. واللاندلورد صاحب الملك, صاحب المال, صاحب العقار, اللاندلورد. بعض المفردات هنا ممكن تطلعون عليها. pay the rent الإيجار and any other specified charges, وأي نفقات أخرى. avoid causing or make good any damage beyond normal wear and tear. notify the landlord of any repair requirement. كل هاي الأشياء بها مفردات. sometimes they are a little bit strange for us, so we need to be aware of these words in order to strengthen our knowledge. Because I have something to send for you, I will stop here and send you the Google form in order to do what I am asking, and I'll cover these later. invaluable وvaluable, كل هاي الwords إن شاء الله راح ناخذها في a next lecture. Now I am going to send you something, and I want you to